Joining us now to discuss is former presidential advisor, New York Times bestselling author of Inside Trump's White House, The Real Story of His Presidency, and presidential historian Doug Wead. Doug, I don't think President Trump gets enough credit for the spiritual leader that he really was.
Yeah, it's interesting. His last proclamation for National Day of Prayer, he mentions God 7 times in the proclamation. I'm sorry, 11 times in the proclamation. I said 7. That was Abraham Lincoln. Abraham Lincoln, in his second inaugural address, mentioned God 7 times. Joe Biden, 0. And you'll remember at the Democrat National Convention, it was quite controversial. They decided to open the convention on 2 sessions without mentioning under God in the Pledge of Allegiance, which was very, very curious.
Well, it's unbelievable how they're carrying that through now. President Trump, he actually held prayer events at the White House. He would invite people in. Joe Biden, he's going to give a pre-recorded address for pray.com. Again, it's not even hosted by the White House. I checked his Twitter account today. There was no mention of the National Day of Prayer. It's like they're just trying to kind of pay lip service with the statement, but they're really trying to push God out of this country.
Yeah, that's, Joe Biden talks about uniting America. Well, America is united on this issue. 90% of Americans, according to Gallup, believe in a higher power, God or a higher power, and 82% believe in a personal God. 2.6%, according to the UPI Harris poll, are atheists. So America is united in believing in God. It's just Joe Biden. It's clear his motive is not to unite America. It's to change America. And the leftist agenda requires getting rid, or at least watering down religion. Karl Marx talked about it as the opium of the people. It gets in the way. There's one other thing I want to add, Natalie, for you to think about. You mentioned since 1952 that they always celebrated at the Capitol. That's because a law was passed in 1952. Joe Biden doesn't just choose whether or not he wants to have a proclamation on the Day of Prayer. A law is passed requiring the President of the United States to issue a proclamation on the Day of Prayer. Now, he chose not to mention God, but he had by law required to issue a proclamation on the National Day of Prayer. Isn't that something? Wow. So that's since Eisenhower, they've celebrated it. When I was in the White House, we had it in the East Room. We had it sometimes in the Roosevelt Room, sometimes in the OEOB, but it was always held sacred. Why not? 90% of the country.
Right, and it became a National Day of Prayer recently, but talk about the history, because Abraham Lincoln called for a National Day of Prayer. They were on different dates until President Reagan actually established it as the first Thursday in May.
Well, you're right. It's been going on from the very beginning. And Jefferson, who had a very enigmatic interpretation of his own faith, clipping the Bible here and there, he started and emphasized a day of prayer. And Lincoln, what became Thanksgiving was initially a day of prayer, and it evolved into the Thanksgiving holiday. So this has been going on all through our history, and as I said, it unites us. We are united. Biden doesn't want to unite us; he wants to change us, and religion just gets in the way. Karl Marx called it the opiate of the people. It just gets in the way.
Because government, they've really tried to replace government as God, telling you when you can reopen your churches, telling you when you can go to work. It's like really during COVID-19, they wanted to become their own gods in terms of telling us what to do. They even have their own COVID-19 commandments.
Yeah, it was remarkable. The churches were closed and liquor stores were open. It was just, if our grandparents could see it, they wouldn't believe it. So you wonder and you hold your breath for our children and our grandchildren if it isn't reversed, if the Democrats hold a lock on this and they continue to progress down this path where we're headed. In the Soviet Union, of course, as I've mentioned, They outlawed Bach, Johann Sebastian Bach, and Handel. You would never see the Philadelphia Opera at Macy's singing the Hallelujah chorus on Christmas. They'd be sent to camps if they tried to do that. So Christmas trees were against the law in the Soviet Union. So you hope that the Democrats don't just carry this further and further, but somehow we come back to reason.
You're so right. President Trump, he would even declare extra national days of prayer during Hurricane Harvey, during COVID-19. But it's interesting, as you point out, Biden was required by law. And if he wasn't, what do you think? Do you think he would have actually done anything today? Or, I mean, he barely did anything anyway today. But do you think he would have even mentioned it?
I don't think so. I think if they could have gotten away out of it, they would have. They did at the Capitol. There was no law that required them to meet at the Capitol. It's just when the law was passed in 1952, out of great contrition and great thanksgiving for having survived Hitler and World War II, and they passed the law for the proclamation. And naturally, Congress in Capitol Hill wanted to pray too. So even though they weren't required by law, it was always observed until Joe Biden and the left that has taken a grip on this country. And now it's not going to happen at the Capitol. But the proclamation, by law, he was required to give a proclamation. So he gave a proclamation and he talked about climate change, not God.
Oh, you just can't make this stuff up. And what's so upsetting, too, is Nancy Pelosi, praying Nancy Pelosi. She'll pull out, oh, I'm praying for you. He's a devout Catholic. But when it comes right down to it, no, they want us not to be one nation under God. They want us to be one nation under government. And that's what the key difference is there. Doug, it's so good to see you today, always on these special occasions, to really understand the tradition of it. But we'll still pray for those Democrats and we'll still pray for America.
That's right. Thanks, Natalie.
We'll see you soon.
For some reason, this interview you just saw was heavily censored. The only way we know to get around that is if you subscribe to this channel, YouTube channel, and hit the bell. And or if you send this link to a friend in an email, that can get through. Or subscribe to Rumble. They don't seem to censor these. But this one is especially experiencing some rough censorship. Thank you. We're gonna live through this. Bye-bye.